39, the nays are 69, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to and without objection.
Ms. Ming.
Votes aye.
Ms. Ming votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 350, the nays are 69, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. What purpose the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a concurrent resolution and ask unanimous consent for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title.
House Concurrent Resolution 71, concurrent resolution providing for corrections to the enrollment of the bill H.R. 3304.
Is there objection to the consideration of the concurrent resolution? Without objection, the concurrent resolution is agreed to. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. What purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Foreign Affairs be discharged from further consideration of House Resolution 434 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 434, resolution honoring the life, accomplishments, and legacy of Nelson Mandela and expressing condolences on his passing.
Is there objection to the consideration of the resolution? Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. What purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a concurrent resolution and ask unanimous consent for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 72, concurrent resolution providing for corrections to the enrollment of House Joint Resolution 59.
Is there objection to the consideration of the concurrent resolution? Without objection, the concurrent resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Gentleman from New York seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Ways and Means be discharged from the further consideration of H.R. 3458 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3458, a bill to treat payments by charitable organizations with respect to certain firefighters as exempt payments.
Is there objection to the consideration of the bill? Without objection, the bill is engrossed, read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 11 a.m. on Monday, December 16, 2013.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. What purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent that on roll call 640, if I had been present, I would have voted yes. I want it included in the record, and I want to state for the record that I am very disappointed that in the bill that we did not include unemployment insurance. I think it's criminal that the people in the People's House will go home without voting for unemployment for the people.
We start on that.
For what purpose?
Does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Objection. The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to ask our North Carolina colleagues to join me here, along with the Dean of our delegation, Mr. Coble. Mr. Speaker, our colleague of many years, Mel Watt, has just cast his last vote in this body. Mel Watt, the representative of the 12th Congressional District from Charlotte, North Carolina, has just been confirmed by the Senate to be the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So he's going to leave us after today to take over that position. Howard Coble and I are the deans of our respective parties in the House delegation from North Carolina, and we both wanted the House to pause to pay tribute to Mel for his service and his dedication to this institution, and I'm happy at this point to yield to my colleague from North Carolina, Mr. Coble.
Distinguished friend from North Carolina, Mr. Price, I appreciate that. You've already indicated where Mel's going to be leaving. I hope he won't ignore us when he meets us on the streets or in these halls. I don't think he will. But Mel Watt and I have shared several counties in North Carolina for nearly 2 decades. We've both sat as members of the House Judiciary Committee for also 2 decades. So, Mel, we wish you and your family the best wishes, and I yield back to Mr. Price.
I thank the gentleman and want to make note of the fact that Mel's wife, Euleta, is in the gallery tonight, and on behalf of my wife, Lisa, and myself, we have considered the Watts good friends, colleagues, have shared many experiences together, and we're going to miss them both a great deal, although we take some solace in the thought that they're not going too far, and that we will have chances to be together as Mel assumes this new role. Mr. Speaker, Mel Watt is a legislator's legislator. We sometimes say that about colleagues. If there was any doubt about that, it would have been dispelled by what we just heard in the committee room this afternoon, as colleague after colleague from the Judiciary and Financial Services Committee from both sides of the aisle paid tribute to this fine friend and colleague. And there were many stories of collaboration, of disputes and fights that were nonetheless civil and respectful, of mentorship from younger members. There's just no question that Mel has made his imprint on this institution as a man of great intelligence and great expertise, admirably qualified for the job he's about to assume, but also a mainstay of legislative work in the committees that he served on during his entire time here, Financial Services and Judiciary. So we're going to miss him. I probably speak for others in the delegation. Actually, I'll just speak for myself, but I know when the votes occur, the roll call votes occur, that's the name I check. Just like I used to check John Spratt's name. There are few colleagues that one respects so much that you want to make sure you're just not going too far astray when you cast those votes. And I will miss Mel in that very practical way. But we will not take much time here this evening. It's mainly a matter here as the votes come to a close and Mel casts his last vote of before this body, testifying to how highly we regard this colleague and honoring him for his service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, I yield my time.
The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have been watching the live feed of the online protests in Kiev, and I would like to encourage Ukrainians to stand firm and continue to voice their opinions. I also call upon the Ukrainian government to respect Ukrainians' right to free assembly and to refrain from using force against peaceful protesters. I again urge Ukraine to look toward the West for their future, as the success of their nation depends on democratic policies and freedom. The door is still open. Strengthening ties with Russia will only bring more of the same desolation, disunity, frustration, distrust, and anger that has been so prevalent in the past. Ukraine, the whole world is watching. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this is definitely the last time I will be addressing this House. As my colleague David Price has indicated, I've been confirmed to a new position as regulator and director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. I just wanted to take a moment to express to my colleagues how much of an honor it has been to be a part of this body and to grow and learn and share with my colleagues from all across the nation. It's been a great honor, and I thank all of them for the expressions in the last few days, and I look forward to working with them in the new position that I will be assuming. Thank you. And of course, we've already acknowledged my wife in the gallery. I thank her. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time once and for all.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to mourn the passing of a legendary Ohio political figure, a great father and a tremendous role model, William Mallory Sr., whom I had the honor to know and call a friend. Bill Mallory's life is a true American success story. He rose from working-class roots to become the first African-American to serve as a majority floor leader in the Ohio House of Representatives, a position he held longer than any other lawmaker in Ohio history. During his 28-year tenure in the Ohio House, Bill Mallory, a former teacher, championed education issues and helped create Ohio's first statewide drug prevention program. But perhaps the most enduring legacy is his family's dedication to public service and community involvement. Of Bill Mallory's 5 sons, one is an elections administrator at the Hamilton County Board of Elections, 2 are Hamilton County Municipal Court judges, another is an Ohio State representative, and the 5th is the outgoing 2-term mayor of Cincinnati. Mr. Speaker, William Mallory Sr. will long be remembered for his devotion to his family, to his community, and to the state of Ohio. Yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the early morning hours of December 24, 2012, the town of West Webster, New York, suffered a horrible tragedy as a troubled individual set his sister on fire along with her house and then lay in wait until the firefighters arrived. He shot and killed 2 firemen and wounded 2 more. In the days and weeks that followed, the town of West Webster, the city of Rochester, and our entire region responded with an outpouring of support for the families whose lives had been irrevocably changed because of the attack. Donations poured into the nonprofit volunteer West Webster Fire Department in hopes that they would reach the families whose loved ones had been killed. Unfortunately, the fire department was in no position to deal with the complex legalities involved with delivering these donations to the intended families, and as a result, the majority of that money has still not been able to reach the families. For almost a year now, I've worked with the people of West Webster, particularly the West Webster Fire Chief Ken Smith, to finally deliver the charitable donations. And thanks to the generous efforts of Chairman Camp and our allies in the city, we will finally be able to help these families today. The assistance of Chairman Camp and his staff in particular has been vital, resolving the issue once and for all. And his commitment over the recent months to helping West Webster and their loved ones is a testament to his dedication to public service. Today's vote is terribly important to the recipients. There are no words that can heal the wounds that were suffered by Ted Scardino and Joe Hofstetter, and nothing we can do would ever bring back Mike Ciporini and Tomasz Kaczewski. But passing today's legislation can help to lessen their burden, hopefully to ease their pain, and to prove that even in our darkest hours, our country will be there to support our public servants, their families, and their communities in need. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, tonight Southeast Missouri will welcome back Staff Sergeant Eric Summers for the last time. Sergeant Summers was tragically killed on November 13th while serving his country at Camp Pendleton in California. Summers served 13 years with United States Marines and is a war hero. He served 5 tours of duty in the Middle East and was highly decorated, earning the Navy Commendation Medal, the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal. Without men like Sergeant Summers, willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, our country could not survive. I would ask my colleagues and those watching to keep Sergeant Summers, his family, and all of our brave men and women in uniform in our thoughts and prayers.
For what purpose does a gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Along with our good friend Congressman Mel Watt, I'm delighted to rise today to say farewell to a very able and important American, Nicarcia Nikki Mays, who has served this House of Representatives for 36 years. She began her career in the House of Representatives and for the people of the United States on September 7, 1977, when she was hired on the recommendation of Congressman Augustus Hawkins of California as an elevator operator and entrusted to operate the last members-only manual elevator. In 1980, Nicarcia Mays, or Nikki as we affectionately know her to be, was hired as a staff member of then the Office of the Doorkeeper. She was the first African-American woman ever hired by that office. It's because of her dutifulness and her leadership, other doors were open. And in 1994, Nikki joined the staff of the Office of the Sergeant of Arms, serving as a member of the Chamber Security Division in her retirement this day, December the 13th, 2013. It is important to note that her excellent performance, distinguished service, and good cheer paved the way for more African Americans to secure appointments in the Office of the Sergeant of Arms and other important House institutions, earned her the respect and friendship of her colleagues and, of course, members of Congress. She has a wonderful family, including her sons John Mays III, who works for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and David, who works for the Department of Homeland Security, her daughter Tyra, who is a forensic specialist. It knows that she has done well at home and well here in the House of Representatives. Her children have learned from her. Her grandchildren will benefit from her. I'm delighted to introduce and indicate that we've also introduced a resolution, HRES 444, into the House record to honor Nikki Mays. I am delighted to say that we honor you and appreciate you for 36 years of service and being a pioneering woman of service and an African-American woman who led for others. Thank you so very much.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Permission to address the House floor.
rise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this evening, this Congress defied a rocky trajectory that has defined the past year of government shutdowns and starting with the fiscal cliff by passing a 2-year compromise budget deal. I worked with you, Mr. Speaker, and others in our bipartisan United Solutions Caucus to support this bipartisan compromise, knowing that it's not the deal that ideally I would want. It doesn't do enough to restore Head Start funding or NIH funding, but it is a compromise and it is a step forward. Now I'm asking my colleagues in this chamber, let's build on this momentum. Today I am ending a 24-hour fast for comprehensive immigration reform. I'll end it in just about 1 hour. Let's come back in January and do the right thing for the people in our country who are living in the shadows, the undocumented immigrants, and let's finally pass comprehensive immigration reform and build on the momentum we showed we can do tonight. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to pay tribute to a very special lady, Nicarcia Nikki Mays, the first African-American woman to serve as a doorkeeper of the House of Representatives. She started her service in September of 1977 and after today will retire after 36 years of service. She has always served every day with a warm smile, pleasant greeting, encouraging and kind words, and the highest level of professionalism. So we want to just say tonight, we thank you for your 36 years of excellent service to the House of Representatives and to all of us, and wish you a wonderful retirement. And I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New Hampshire seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
I'm going to read a letter that I received from a constituent who's about to have her unemployment benefits cut. And I quote, "Now that I am laid off and older, I'm having difficulty finding a job. I understand now I cannot get unemployment extension. I've never collected anything in my life. So now what? I'm going to be homeless. I do not qualify for anything because I made too much money. I have spent my savings, applied for 500-plus jobs to an aimless black hole. What am I going to do? A homeless shelter? My credit is damaged, and soon I will not pass a background check. I do not qualify for retraining programs, etc., because I have excellent skill sets. All I hear is I'm in a perfect storm. Sorry, you are not alone. I have been a productive member of society for many years and do not consider myself a taker. How many unemployed will lose their homes, dignity, and hope? I wanted you to know." And so to my constituent, I do know, and Americans know, and it was wrong to leave without fixing this problem. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In addition to saluting and congratulating our colleague and friend, Congressman Mel Watt, I want to rise and salute our friend, Nikki Mays, tonight. And, Nikki, I just have to say to you, first of all, I was a staffer for Ron Dellums when I first met Nikki, and I know tonight Ron would want to salute you, congratulate you, and thank you so much for your 36 years of service. And so on behalf of Ron Dellums and myself, let me just say what a great role model you have been for all of us. But also I want to thank you for helping us navigate this great institution. We will always remember you. We will cherish your friendship. And also, I just want to say to you that as you start this new chapter of your life, hope you get some rest, but hope you have a lot of fun. Thank you again, Nikki.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to thank all of our brave heroes who are serving overseas and are not home with their families this holiday season. While most of us will be returning to our homes to celebrate with family and friends, let us not forget all of the men and women serving our country who will not be able to be with their loved ones. My region of Illinois is home to thousands of veterans who have served honorably in wartime and peacetime. It is also home to many active duty service members, National Guard members, and ready reservists. I was heartened to learn recently that the Peoria-based Army National Guard unit is expected to come home before the holidays. This will surely be an early Christmas present for many families across the region of the country that I serve. I look forward to helping welcome them home. All of our service members deserve our full support year-round, but let us please take this holiday season as an opportunity to thank them for their sacrifices that they have given to their families and to our country. Let us be there for them now because they are there for us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
I rise to address the House for 1 minute, please.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, as we end this particular legislative session, I just wanted to rise and say that on the one hand, the vast majority of members voted to run the government of the United States prudently and within budget and to operate as adults over the next 2 years. On the other hand, the lack of a provision in that bill to accommodate those who are unemployed across this country is a sad commentary on the leadership of this House. In the state of Ohio, where Speaker Boehner hails from, over half of the counties in Ohio are above the national unemployment average of 7%, which is way too high for the country as a whole. For us as a chamber not to be able to include, especially before Christmas and the holiday season, extension of unemployment benefits, even for a few months, for people who will now face Christmas and the New Year with even more worry and hardship, is unconscionable for this nation. I just know that we are capable of better. And you know, I would suggest to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, if you but shaved 1% off every account in the discretionary part of the budget, you would be able to find the money to extend the benefits for 3 more months, and then we can look toward a more permanent solution from the Ways and Means Committee. And I thank the chair for allowing me to make this important statement for the record. America can do better for our unemployed. Thank you so very much.
Are there any more requests for 1 minute? The chair lays before the House the following personal requests.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Doyle of Pennsylvania for today until 3:30 p.m. and Mr. Rush of Illinois for today and tomorrow, December 13th.
Without objection, the requests are granted. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3, 2013, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fattah, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise at this moment for the House to appropriately acknowledge the life and legacy, the true extraordinary leadership of President Nelson Mandela, who has passed on to history now. But during his 95 years, he played an extraordinary role in the life of his country and his countrymen. And this Congress played a part in that process through the debates on this floor and through, finally, the passage of sanctions, and then even more so overriding the presidential veto and putting into place sanctions that President Mandela indicated and all recognized plays an important role in ending apartheid in South Africa. So there are members who are no longer members of the House, some who have passed on themselves, and Congressman Bill Gray from Philadelphia, who authored the sanctions legislation, but Congressman Dellums, who had previously offered and fought side by side, and many members of the Congressional Black Caucus and others, Democrats and Republicans, on the floor of this House who were involved in this activity. So I rise for this special order for us to appropriately pay tribute to the leadership that was exhibited by President Mandela and his African National Congress. I'm going to yield, and for only 2.5 minutes per member, an opportunity for them to reflect on the life of President Mandela. And obviously we recognize that he was born and that he died, that he went to school and he played certain roles in his profession as a lawyer, but he has been recognized around the world for the struggle that he led and that he dedicated his life to. I first yield to the gentlelady from the great state of Ohio and who chairs the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Marsha Fudge.
Thank you, and I
2.5
thank you so much, Mr. Fattah, for leading this special order. Mr. Speaker, today we celebrate the life and legacy of former South African President Nelson Mandela, a relentless pioneer for justice, equality, and democracy. I am proud to say that members of the Congressional Black Caucus stood with President Mandela before it was popular or politically advantageous. Working with grassroots advocates, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and many others from across the world, Mandela activated a movement that not only spoke of democracy and equality, but realized those principles through action. Meaningful action that ultimately broke the chains of apartheid and will be forever remembered as the legacy of Madiba. Today, the CBC salutes the life of a world leader who sacrificed a lifetime for the ideals of democracy. Today, we celebrate the life of a man from humble beginnings who overcame the obstacles of racial intolerance and rose to lead a country and a people to prosperity and freedom. Today, we cherish the life of a president who led with dignity and strength. Today, we treasure the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela, Madiba. You will forever be remembered. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and I thank her for her leadership on this House floor on behalf of not just the people she represents in Ohio, but throughout the country. I now want to recognize someone who is no stranger to struggle. Nelson Mandela once said, when asked about his life being a struggle, he said, "No, you misinterpret. The struggle is my life." Well, the struggle is this gentleman's life. I recognize the gentleman from the great state of Georgia, John Lewis, for 2.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my friend and colleague for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise to join my colleagues to pay tribute to a man I deeply admired, President Nelson Mandela. When I first met Mr. Mandela, I felt as if I was touching the spirit of greatness. He was tall, graceful, with the common spirit of the Dalai Lama. President Mandela was one of those rare individuals, like Gandhi, Lincoln, or King, who come along only once in a generation and who are a blessing to all humanity. They teach us not just to liberate the body, but to free our minds and unleash the power of the human spirit. This weekend, I had the honor of traveling with members of the House and one member of the Senate to attend the official memorial service in South Africa. I would like to thank you. I thank the Speaker, his staff, for working with Chairwoman Fudge to ensure that Congress were represented at this global tribute. Tonight, I express my deepest sympathy to the family and friend of President Mandela, the people of South Africa, and the global community. We have lost a giant of a man who embodied grace, dignity, and peace. He just walked out of prison after 27 years without any bitterness, hostility, or hatred. And through the power of love and complete forgiveness, President Mandela not only freed the oppressed, but he's also freed the oppressor. What we know of his long walk to freedom, what he endured and what he overcame, has made us all a little more human. And what he taught us about reconciliation, love, and inner peace inspire each and every person who knows his story to be better, stronger, more loving, more peaceful citizens of the global community. He was the father of a new South Africa who helped build a new nation more focused on unity today than ever before. During the height of the Civil Rights Movement, Mr. Speaker, the chant of the South African people became our chant: one man, one vote. He was a great leader, but I never thought that I would have the honor of meeting him and calling him my friend, my brother. During this holiday season, I hope that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, in both chambers, will use this time to reflect on how we can be representatives of the people, can continue the work of unity, extend the legacy of love, of service, and respect for all humankind, as Mr. Nelson Mandela did. And with that, I yield back my time.
The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed, with amendments, H.R. 3547, to extend the application of certain space launch liability provisions through 2014, in which the concurrence of the House is requested.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you. I met President Mandela on a number of occasions, both in Philadelphia and here in Washington, and when I traveled to Africa with then President Bill Clinton, when Mandela was leading some peace talks in a country that was involved in a great deal of conflict at that time. But before I met Nelson Mandela, I knew a state legislator from the great state of California who had led the fight and the rallying cry in state houses, not just in California, but around the country, for divestiture from South Africa. And I want to recognize now Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who really was an extraordinary figure in the fight in the United States to get pension funds and universities and others to divest. So I recognize her, Maxine Waters, for 2.5 minutes.
I want to thank my friend and colleague from Pennsylvania for that warm introduction. And I want to thank the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. We just returned from South Africa, where we participated with thousands of folks from across South Africa, memorializing Nelson Mandela. And it was a wonderful moment in our lives. But of course, Nelson Mandela has helped us all to be better persons. He has inspired us all in so many different ways. When I was a member of the California State Legislature, I authored the legislation that divested all of our pension funds from doing businesses in South Africa. And so that legislation caught fire across the country, and we had other divestment movements going on and others divesting their funds from businesses that were doing business in South Africa. We went on to have rallies and marches. We came to Washington, D.C. We got arrested at the South African embassy. We sat in the South African consulate in Los Angeles. We worked with students on the college campuses. They got involved in divestments. Some of them took the names of the streets in those campuses down and made them Nelson Mandela Way. And as we worked and worked, we were instrumental in helping to free Nelson Mandela, who had served 27 years in prison. In addition to that, some of us had the opportunity to go to South Africa when they lifted the ban on the ANC, and we witnessed all of those heroes who came back from out of exile. We continued to work with them until Nelson Mandela walked out free from having served that 27 years. And then we were able to welcome him to the United States in Los Angeles. We put together a huge celebration. And when he and Winnie Mandela walked out on that stage, the crowd just exploded. But it exploded because here was a man who had the courage of his convictions, a man that was so committed to freedom, justice, and equality that he was willing to put his life on the line. He was a warrior, and he tried to negotiate. He tried to get the South African government to realize that they should be recognizing that black South Africans were human beings too. And when they didn't, he organized the struggle. He resisted, and of course they placed him in prison, and some people thought that we will never see black South Africans free. But because of Nelson Mandela, and because the people loved him so, followed him as he led, today we have a free South Africa. Mandela is gone. He's no longer with us, but he will be remembered forever because what he did was such a feat that we cannot identify anybody else, certainly in the 20th century, that led the way that he led. And so I'm pleased to be here with my colleagues tonight paying tribute to him. And I thank my colleagues for all the work that they too participated in to honor him. I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentlelady, and she reminds me of all of the great people in Philadelphia who played a role. Godfrey Sotoli, who represented the ANC, he was the ANC's representative there, and former State Representative David Richardson and Sonia Sanchez. But the one clarion voice in the Congress, when I was very, very young, who introduced the divestiture legislation and was just at the very point of the spear, was Congressman Ron Dellums. And Barbara Lee, who now represents that district but worked for the great congressman when he was here, I want to recognize Congresswoman Barbara Lee now, who has dedicated a significant part of her work to helping Africa in its development and continuing to deal with the challenges that remain after so many years of a colonial rule in a number of these countries. But Congresswoman Barbara Lee, you are now recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Let me thank you, Congressman Fattah, first of all, for yielding and for your tremendous leadership on so many fronts. And thank you so much for this special order tonight and for reminding us in many ways of the history of this great movement that took place in this country. Let me also just thank our chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, for her tremendous leadership and her tireless work, and for the real humbling honor to be part of her delegation to South Africa to honor President Mandela, also to Leader Pelosi and to our Assistant Leader, Mr. Clyburn. Let me just take a moment to extend my thoughts and prayers on behalf of my district to President Mandela's family, for South Africa. We all have lost a warrior. South Africa has lost a warrior. The world has lost a freedom fighter and a great statesman. The Congressional Black Caucus stood alongside the ANC and Nelson Mandela in the fight for equality and justice, and I'm so proud of his contribution. Even throughout his 27 years of incarceration and brutal treatment, his spirit was never broken, and this stands really as a testament to the power of resistance and determination. Not only is Nelson Mandela the father of the liberation movement in South Africa, but he also laid the framework for modern liberation movements throughout the world. With a dignified defiance, Nelson Mandela never compromised his political principles or the mission of the anti-apartheid movement, and he took up the mantle of fighting HIV and AIDS. Like many of my colleagues, I was first inspired by Mr. Mandela in the early 70s. I was arrested in Berkeley, California during the time when our brave brothers and sisters in the labor movement refused to unload ships carrying cargo from South Africa that arrived in Oakland's port. My predecessor, former Congressman Ron Dellums, led the effort with Congressman, our beloved Bill Gray, over and over and over again, introducing legislation calling for divestment against this racist apartheid regime. But they finally put the United States on the right side of history when the Congress overrode President Reagan's veto. And I vividly remember that the ANC was designated a terrorist organization by the United States government, and it was illegal to meet with the freedom fighters, but many of us did anyway. I remember meeting with ANC members in the United Nations and Switzerland and Austria to help map out our solidarity work here in the United States. So you can imagine how I personally felt when I joined some of you as an election observer, seeing lines and lines of people waiting to vote for the first time for Nelson Mandela as the first black president of a free South Africa. One of my proudest moments as a member of Congress was when I led the effort to remove President Mandela, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, from the ANC from the U.S. terrorist watch list in time for his 90th birthday, just 5 years ago. What now lives is Mandeba's legacy of sacrifice, fighting for what is right, and as an example of the power of healing and reconciliation. And I just have to say, that legacy was shown briefly in the handshake of President Obama when he extended it to President Raul Castro of Cuba. I was proud of that handshake for what it means for diplomacy and the possibility of opening lines of communication. That handshake stands with the legacy of Nelson Mandela, of working and negotiating with those with whom you may not agree. As Madiba said, and I quote, "Reconciliation means working together to correct the legacy of past injustice." He was a peacemaker. President Mandela taught us so many lessons, from reconciliation and personal perseverance to the true meaning of public service. What he taught us was never to give up the fight for justice. I had the privilege to meet Mr. Mandela many times. His serenity and his strength really was larger than life. His legacy will live on forever in how we live our lives in the fight for freedom and for justice in a multiracial society. I hope, finally, let me just say, that I hope in his honor that we live his legacy and continue our fight to end racism and to defend voting rights right here in the United States. May his soul rest in peace.
I thank the gentlelady from California, and I want to recognize my colleague from the United States Virgin Islands, Congresswoman Donna Christensen, for
Thank
2.5 minutes.
Thank you. And I want to begin by thanking you, Congressman Fattah, for bringing us together to dedicate this hour to the life and legacy of an iconic leader who has truly fought the good fight, has now finished the race, and always kept the faith. Our beloved Madiba, President Mandela of South Africa. And to say to Congresswoman Fudge, as I was honored to join her and my other colleagues and our CODEL leader, Congressman Aaron Schock, at the funeral of President Mandela in Johannesburg on Tuesday, I am again honored to join all of you to speak on behalf of my constituents, the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands, in tribute to this great man. Behind me is a picture of the sign that marks the site of Mandela Circle in St. Thomas. It was given that name in jubilant celebration when he was released from prison after 27 years. And through it, the people of the Virgin Islands have paid tribute to Nelson Mandela every day. I want to especially recognize and remember someone who I honored several years ago, a gentleman named Dale Rogers, who from the time the circle was so named until he died, took it upon himself to sweep and maintain the area so that it would always be a fitting tribute. The St. Thomas St. John Environmental Association will host a community gathering at that site on Saturday. In the days since December 5th, the people have gathered there with signs and flowers and have adorned the area with black and purple ribbons. There have been vigils and other ceremonial tributes. Our flags, like flags across the country, were flown at half-staff, and our Governor, John P. DeYoung, Jr., in tribute said, and I quote, "The people of the Virgin Islands have a deep love and respect for Nelson Mandela and all that he came to represent. Nelson Mandela was an inspiration to Virgin Islanders and to aspiring democracies and free nations around the world." Tomorrow, the legislature of the Virgin Islands will host a public tribute. Our Senate President, Sean Michael Malone, said in remembrance, and I quote him as well, "The world has lost a civil and human rights champion, and oppressed people everywhere have lost a splendid example of sacrifice, discipline, commitment, and resolve to end injustice around the world." On Sunday, on St. Croix, one of our senators, Senator Terrence Nelson, will lead a festive celebration of his life in Fredericksted's Butto Park, which is the historic site where enslaved Africans seized freedom from my ancestors in the then Danish West Indies in 1848. But even when these celebrations are ended, it is my hope and prayer that the essence of why we celebrate Madiba remains firmly planted in our hearts and minds. For it would be the real tribute to a man who taught us how to be resolute in our fight for justice and equality to the end, and that love, peace, and reconciliation is a better path for us and for the world than hatred, conflict, and retribution. In fact, the only way to true freedom. To his wife, his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, to his extended family, and all of the people of South Africa, we extend our deepest sympathy, but also our deep appreciation, for you have given us, the people of the Virgin Islands, our nation, and the world, a beautiful gift that has enriched our lives and inspired us to be better human beings. I consider myself blessed not only to have met him, but just to have lived in the time of Nelson Mandela and to be able to personally bear witness to his life and legacy. Madiba loved the CBC. The CBC loved and will always love Madiba. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and I thank the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands for establishing this honor. Obviously, there are many segments of Nelson Mandela's life, And there was a period, a point when he was a lawyer. There was a point in which he was leading and involved in negotiations. There was a point in which, upon the police assault on those who gathered in Sharpeville, when 69 died, that he took up armed struggle. And then there was a point after being released from prison after 27 years that he was elected president. I embrace the entire legacy. I think it is very much in keeping with our own country's evolution over time, in which you had to deal with the times as they presented themselves. I want to recognize the gentlelady from the state of Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee, for 2.5 minutes, and her predecessor, Congressman Mickey Whelan, who was so involved in these issues over time. Sheila Jackson Lee, 2.5 minutes.
Let me thank the Congressional Black Caucus and Mr. Fattah and our chairwoman, Congresswoman Fudge, for bringing us all together on this very important evening. It gives me great privilege to be able to speak about this patriot, this human rights leader, this father and husband, this man who experienced incarceration but yet came out with the limitations that would normally shackle anyone completely released. And it's important to connect Nelson Mandela to Houston, and this signifies many of us who gathered in front of the federal building just a week ago to be able to honor him and to acknowledge him. So many of us wanted to share and extend our love. We also participated in honoring him in restaurants in Southwest Houston, and throughout the week, as I go home this week, we will honor him at the George R. Brown Convention Center and the Shake Community Center. Last Sunday, I was able to call in to a very important honoring at the Rothko Chapel, celebrating Dominique Demonel, who invited Nelson Mandela to Houston, Texas in 1991, 1 year after he was released from Robbins Island. And the surprise and the excitement was that he accepted her invitation, the Demonels being great humanitarians themselves, and brought together the connection between Houston, the nation, and South Africa, and the patriot that Nelson Mandela Madiba was and, of course, will always be reminded of. We listened to the stories of the time that he had to pull away from the ANC to form a fighting unit, if you will, a rebel unit. And I also explained that to people, that it was no less than the patriots who stood on the shores of this country to fight against oppression and to stand against the British and to dump tea into Boston Harbor, to rebel against oppression. And so I would never call Nelson Mandela a terrorist. I would call him a patriot, one who loved his beloved South Africa and wanted to make sure that those who understood that apartheid could not stand would recognize that he had no other choice. But yet, in time, he was able to make other choices. And I'm reminded of his words, courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And he triumphed over fear, but he triumphed over bitterness. And he opened his arms, and coming out of that incarceration in 1990 and walking in freedom, standing with his then wife Winnie and now his beloved wife that has been with him for the past 15 years, he expressed to the nation his humanity, his humility. An elder statesman, a father figure, Nelson Mandela showed us that in the course of the debate here on the floor of the House, that we should never forget the vulnerable. I want to read these words that he gave in defense in the 1964 trial. I have fought against, his words, white domination. I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if it needs to be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. I've met Nelson Mandela many times, engaged in the efforts to ensure that the apartheid oppression would end. joined with Congresswoman Barbara Lee in 2008 to rid his name off the terrorist list. All of us in our small way are diminished by the commitment, dedication, and sacrifice of this man. And so finally, I close by saying to all, in a letter that he wrote from Robben Island in April 1971, for many of us who had the experience of walking into that cell and looking through those prison bars, to be reminded of the peace that he brought to the nation and to the world. There are times when my heart almost stops beating, slowed down by heavy loads of longing. I would love to bathe once more in the waters of Umbashi, as I did at the beginning of 1935. He comforted himself by the wishes of hope. He comforted himself by wishing to hear the voices of children. He comforted himself by wanting to be what the people of South Africa needed, an unembittered leader coming forward to lift the country up. Madiba, may you rest in peace. Nelson Mandela, thank you for service for all of your years. Thank you for leading South Africa, and thank you for leading the world. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady from the great state of Texas. And in 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected president. It was not of the same historical importance, but I was elected to the Congress. But I'm reminded that every day we are made anew, and we have a new Congresswoman from the great state of Ohio, and I want to recognize her now, Congresswoman Beatty, for 2.5 minutes on the life of Nelson Mandela.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Fattah, for organizing this special order hour for us. First, let me say, as I stand here today, to be honored to talk about a man who is hard to define, because he's a man who gave so much of his life, a man who understood that his success would be the success of the people around him. Yesterday, I returned from South Africa, where I had the distinct honor and pleasure to pay tribute to a man who inspired billions, for his courage, for his commitment to people, for his fight for justice, for equality, and for freedom. Hundreds of thousands of people from around the world came there, witnessed it through electronic media, and gave their final respect to a man we love so dearly and call Madiba, a most beloved leader who liberated South Africa from apartheid. They waited for hours, they lined up, they filled the streets, and there I was, this new freshman, with my Congressional Black Caucus members and members from this Congress. So I say to our chairwoman and president of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, job well done for leading us. And to Congressman Aaron Schock, thank you for leading us on this delegation. And as I sat there with my colleagues and witnessed the spirit, the culture, and the evidence that a great man has gone on, we watched the spirit and the rhythm of the toi-toi and the dancers. And as the memorial service began, to have our President of these United States come and pay tribute to Nelson within itself was a great honor. Before his election in 1994, he gave up so much to rid his country of injustice. As we know, he spent 27 years, almost a third of his life, in prison, most of that time on Robben Island, which I had the opportunity to visit. 14 years living in a small cell without water or accommodations for his personal needs speaks volumes for him. But to be able to see this firsthand, what Mandela endured in that tiny, isolated cell when I was there to set his people free. Time and time again, Nelson Mandela taught the world many powerful lessons about justice, tolerance, and reconciliation. He astonished us all with his ability to forgive, something that we should remember on this House floor. including his forgiveness for those who jailed him and persecuted his family. Nelson Mandela lastly believed in people. He believed in communities. He believed in countries, and he believed in world change for the better, something that I think we're witnessing now with our first president of these United States, a man of color. So I say to us, let us remember his words. It seems impossible until it's done. To you, Madiba, we say, job well done. God bless you.
I thank the gentle lady from the great state of Ohio. And obviously, when Nelson Mandela looked at the United States, one of the things that he was most interested in was the civil rights